Two things that can't both be true. November 2nd, 2025, Johnathan Porter walks out of a California correctional facility after roughly 22 months inside on a probation violation tied to a Las Vegas strip club shooting per 8 News Now. Within days of coming home, he's on X airing grievances at the mother of 2 of his kids, Jaidyn Alexis, saying she abandoned him the first week of a sentence per complex. 22 months. Not 1 week. 22. That math is the first receipt in this case. And the man doing the math is the same man who, weeks later, posted intimate footage of the mother of his children on his own account and then acted surprised the internet had questions. We're not opening this one loud. We're opening it quiet, because when the paper is this clean, you don't need volume. Real quick, before this thing gets into the actual timeline, if you want the version of these stories where the receipts get read before the reactions, hit the like, ride with the channel, and tap the bell so the next case doesn't get lost in your feed. That's it. Back to work. Here's the ground. Johnathan Porter, publicly known as Blueface, turned himself in January 12, 2024 in Van Nuys after a probation violation per Fox 11 Los Angeles. Sentenced August 2024 to 4 years per the same reporting. Released early on parole November 2nd, 2025 per public state records referenced by 8 News Now. Jaidyn Alexis, mother of 2 of his children, signed to Columbia Records in a deal announced October 2023 per Vibe. Formerly engaged to Porter. Currently, per her own public statements since his release, no longer romantically involved with him. The current news cycle. Intimate video content of Jaidyn, reportedly involving a third party referred to publicly as Bravo, surfaced on Porter's own account before being deleted per HotNewHipHop. Jaidyn addressed the incident on her livestream. She did not consent to the release of that footage. That's the entire fact of it. We're not describing it. We're not linking it. We're not archiving it. That's not what this video is. What this video is, a paper trail of what Jaidyn Alexis has actually said, actually filed toward, and actually built, while a very loud man tries to write over it in real time. Let me pull the primary documents, not the tweets, the actual on-record statements from Jaidyn's own mouth, dated, sourced, and standing. Exhibit 1. October 2022. Jaidyn sits down with the Shade Room during the first wave of public conversation around Porter's altercations with his then-girlfriend. She's asked directly about domestic violence. Her quote, verbatim from the outlet, "Domestic violence in general is serious as fuck and should never be made a joke of or taken light-heartedly." She continues from that same interview per the Shade Room. "I think that not every situation or relationship is the same or as easy as people make it out to be. Definitely think that something should be done or changes need to be made in any relationship that is experiencing those type of issues." And then, the line I want you to hold onto for the rest of the video, "We all need to start normalizing asking for help when it's needed." Read that back. That's a public position on record from 3 years ago. Not a subtweet. Not a live stream in the middle of a fight. A sit-down interview with a major outlet where she chose those words carefully. Exhibit 2. November 2025. Days after Porter's release, he's on X claiming Jaidyn left him for dead within the first week of his sentence per complex. He claims he gave her $90,000 before turning himself in with an expected $30,000 return. Jaidyn's public response, also captured in Complex's reporting, their financial agreement changed after additional time was added to his sentence, and she flatly denies ever asking him for money while he was inside. She also alleges he was involved with one of her friends and a close friend's baby mother during that same window. 2 claims. 2 counterclaims. What's the tiebreaker? The paper. Exhibit 3. December 2025 into 2026. The intimate footage lands on Porter's own X account. He posts it. He deletes it. Jaidyn, on her live stream captured by Livebitez and reported by HotNewHipHop, acknowledges the footage exists and addresses the release directly. Her exact words, "Cleaned only for platform. I'm very upset because I am a mother, obviously, and that is definitely something I would never have put out. I would never have done that. So clearly, it's out of my control. Then this on the source of the post. It definitely came from his page. So, unless there's a video of someone else posting it, you can shove that excuse up your freaking ass. That's not an admission of anything except that she didn't release the footage. She's a mother. She said so. She said she'd never have put it out. That's the record. Exhibit 4. Also captured in that HotNewHipHop reporting, Jaidyn describes the situation as revenge, meaning her framing of what happened with Bravo was itself a response to Porter's own alleged behavior during his incarceration. Whether you accept that framing or not is a separate question. What's not up for debate is that she says she did not consent to the release, and the release came from his account. That's the filing pass. That's the paper. Now, let me show you what happens when you lay it on the calendar. Here's where it gets structural. Pull the dates out of the individual stories and stack them on top of each other. October 2022, Jaidyn does the DV interview. 60 seconds of quotes that read now like she was leaving a message in a bottle for herself 3 years in the future. October 2023, Columbia Records signing announced. Per Vibe, the deal is folded into Porter's imprint infrastructure. She's not just a partner in a personal relationship at this point. She's inside his business ecosystem. That distinction is going to matter in a minute. January 12th, 2024, Porter turns himself in. Per Fox 11, this is the moment where Jaidyn goes from partner and label mate to sole, day-to-day parent of 2 young children, while the other parent is in custody. August 2024, 4-year sentence handed down. Somewhere across 2024 and early 2025, the alleged Bravo situation happens. She frames it as revenge. Porter frames it as betrayal. The public didn't have a receipt on it either way until November 2nd, 2025, Porter is out, per Instagram announcements circulated by industry pages and confirmed by Hot 97. Within the first week of his release, X posts accusing Jaidyn of financial abandonment per Complex. Within the first month, the intimate footage lands on his account. You see the rhythm? Wait, let me reread that sequence, because the first time I laid it out, I almost missed the beat. He's inside. She's raising the kids. He gets out. He publicly accuses her of not sending him $50. Then he publicly releases footage that only he had the ability to release. The financial accusation didn't stick. The next move was to raise the temperature. That's not a coincidence. And I'm not going to use that word because we already know why. That's a pattern. In the domestic violence literature, that specific escalation from financial control accusations to sexual humiliation has a name. I'm not going to attach a diagnosis to a person from a keyboard, but the pattern reads for itself. And the Columbia deal? That's the part nobody's talking about. Because if Jaidyn's music career runs through infrastructure connected to a man who's currently on parole and publicly harassing her, that's not just a personal story. That's a labor story. Real quick, if you've been in a workplace where the person doing the harassment is also the person routing the checks, this section is where you drop a comment. Because that's the exact bind, and it's louder than the tabloid version. I want to zoom in on 2 things. Just 2. Because when the whole story is loud, the small stuff is where the truth lives. 1 clause. Nevada State records list Porter's parole-eligible date in the December 2025 window per 8 News Now, with the Nevada probation matter separate from the California custody he served. Meaning, he's not a free man in the fullest legal sense. He's on paper. Both states have leashes on him. Any conduct that could be read as harassment, coercion, or violation of Nevada terms is not just a social media beef, it's potential parole exposure. That is a fact worth sitting with for a second, because it changes what the smart move here would be for him, and the smart move is very clearly not what he did. 1 behavior. The post and delete. Porter didn't just post the intimate footage. He posted it, and then he pulled it down. That pattern shows up multiple times across his public feed on separate controversies. The Kai Band's post and delete was called out by name in a separate exchange per public livestream footage. Post and delete is not a gaffe. It's a distribution strategy. Post it long enough for the screenshots to circulate. Delete it before it becomes a filing. Everyone downstream still sees it. You retain plausible deniability upstream. That's not a man losing control. That's a man managing a leak. Read that back. Because if the release was managed rather than impulsive, then every framing of he was upset, he lashed out, collapses. What you're actually looking at is deliberate. I want to hedge here. I don't have a screenshot of him drafting a strategy note. I can't put intent inside his head. What I can do is note the pattern, note that he's done it before on other topics, and note that the outcome, mass circulation without a permanent host on his account, is exactly what a managed release looks like versus an impulsive one. That's a Tier 3 read. I'm not calling it evidence. I'm calling it what it looks like. Now, let's talk about how this story got sold to you before you got here. Frame 1, the loudest one, dropped through gossip channels. Blueface crashes out and leaks another Jaidyn tape. Jaidyn and Bandz clown him. That's the frame you've probably seen on your feed. Notice what that frame centers. It centers his crash out as the event. It centers the leaked material as the payoff. It centers the countermockery from Jaidyn and Bandz as the resolution. Jaidyn appears in that frame as a punchline delivery mechanism, not as a person whose intimate footage was distributed without her consent. Frame 2 from the hip-hop trade outlets. HotNewHipHop's coverage is the cleanest example. Actually uses the phrase non-consensual leak in line. That's the frame you get when the desk covering the story has thought about what actually happened. That's the frame that survives a lawyer's read. Frame 3 from the community around Porter. The frame is loyalty. She left him inside. He got out. He's owed the reaction. Snitching accusations get thrown at anyone she's currently associated with. The intimate footage becomes framed as evidence in a betrayal case rather than as an act against her. Somebody's going to say, and let me steelman this because I've seen the argument in every comment section, she said herself it was revenge, she brought the third party into it, she made her bed. Take that seriously for a second, because it's not a nothing argument. If you accept that she introduced a third party into a still active relationship dynamic, some readers are going to conclude she participated in the escalation. Here's why the argument still doesn't hold. Consent to a private act is not consent to public distribution. Those are two completely different things, and one does not carry over to the other. Every domestic abuse advocate, every single one, will tell you the release of intimate content without consent is a form of abuse that's specifically named in the literature. California has a law about it. Penal Code Section 647J-4, commonly called the revenge porn statute, doesn't care who cheated on who. It cares about consent to distribution. That's the paper. Everything else is atmosphere. And here's the softer version of the same point. Even if you're morally uncomfortable with the alleged revenge, and you're allowed to be, the response to that discomfort in a healthy society is a conversation, a therapist, a lawyer, a family sit-down. It's not a post and delete on X in front of 2 million followers who share children with her. That's the counter case dismantled, not with insults, with paper. The reason Bandz clowning Porter over the chicken tender bit read as satisfying to a chunk of the internet isn't because it was clever. It's because it was the first moment in this news cycle where someone reframed Porter as the smaller figure in the room. And once you've read the paper, the smaller figure is who he actually is here. That's not an insult. That's just where the receipts land. Here's what the mainstream read is going to be. 2 X's, both messy, tit-for-tat, entertainment blogs get a week of content. Everyone moves on when the next cycle hits. That read is convenient. It's also wrong. Let me be plain about it. What you're actually watching is the public phase of a domestic abuse pattern, and Jaidyn Alexis has been telling you on the record, dated, sourced, how she reads it since 2022. She used the specific words domestic violence in a shade room interview when she was still publicly with him. She said normalize asking for help. She said changes need to be made. 3 years later, the paper trail catches up with her language. She wasn't performing when she said those words. She was leaving evidence. The thesis, this whole news cycle only makes sense as one story if you center it on manufactured image fracture. There's a public persona for Porter as the unbothered player who don't beef over hoes. That persona has been performed loudly since his release. And then there's the paper trail self, and the paper trail self is a parolee in 2 states currently distributing intimate content of the mother of his children, harassing her associates online, and framing his financial dispute with her as her fault while she's the one who had 2 toddlers during his 22 months inside. Those 2 selves cannot both be true. And every time he opens the app, he widens the gap. The industry angle nobody's pricing in. Columbia Records has a signed artist whose de facto label boss is currently in the middle of a public harassment situation with her. That deal was announced 2 years ago, per Vibe. The infrastructure question is real. If Jaidyn's music business is routed through his imprint, the leverage he has over her isn't just interpersonal, it's contractual. A major label with a functioning legal department has to have a conversation about that. If they're not having it, they should be. That's not a demand from me. That's a compliance question. 6 sharpened jabs at the both sides framing. Quick. 1. Both sides messy only works when both sides have the same weapons. He's got a felony record, a state parole officer, and a following in the millions. She's a signed artist trying to raise 2 kids. The room isn't level. 2. She brought Bravo into it is a moral argument dressed up as a legal one. The law does not agree with you. 3. The internet is entertained, no real harm done. The harm is the video existing in circulation forever. Ask any woman who's had intimate content leaked without consent how long the residue lasts. It's not a news cycle. It's a lifetime. First, she's clowning him too. She's not a victim. A person can respond with wit and still be the wrong party. Grace under attack is not consent to the attack. 5. He was in prison. She moved on. That's why he's mad. Moving on during someone's incarceration is not a crime. Releasing intimate content of them is. 6. And this is the softest one. Even his own team has been quiet on the leak specifically. His publicist hasn't fought back on the phrase non-consensual leak appearing in coverage. That silence tells you what the legal read internally must be. The receipts have been on her side for 3 years. They just needed enough of the timeline to fill in before you could see it clean. Once the dust settles on the current news cycle, watch 3 things. First, the parole desk in Nevada is going to get a phone call. Might have already. When a parole defendant publicly distributes intimate content of a co-parent, that's the kind of behavior that shows up in a parole officer's file, whether the officer follows entertainment news or not. Somebody in the reporter ecosystem is going to file a public records request in the next 90 days on any modifications to Porter's terms of release. Don't be surprised if we get news of an added condition, a stay away, a social media restriction, a mental health referral, and don't be surprised if it hits quietly on a Friday news dump. When that lands, we'll bring it back. Second, the Columbia question is going to get louder. Jaidyn Alexis released Fine SHT with Kai Bandz per Instagram and did the video with him. That collaboration only happens if her label side-eyes her existing imprint arrangement and gives her runway to work outside of it. Watch what happens when her next single drops and the credits are read carefully. If the imprint tag from Porter's side of the deal is quietly absent, that's the tell. That's Columbia moving her out from under his tent without saying so publicly. By the time next spring hits, the paperwork behind her releases will look different than the paperwork behind her 2023 releases. That's the falsifiable one. Come back and check it. Third, and this is the residue arc, the 5-year echo, the case study that Jaidyn Alexis ends up being for how a mother inside a public domestic abuse situation extracts herself using her own words as the receipt. Her 2022 Shade Room quotes are going to be recirculated for the rest of her career. They're going to end up in think pieces. They're going to end up in documentaries because she said the quiet part out loud before it was safe to. That's how she wins the long version of the story, even if the current news cycle stays ugly. The record is on her side, and the record does not unwrite itself. The Porter camp is going to keep posting. The posts are going to keep getting deleted. The screenshots are going to keep circulating. Somebody in his orbit is going to convince him to hand the phone over. Whether he listens is the question that decides which version of the next 12 months he lives. Watch the parole desk. Watch the label. Watch her singles credits. 3 tells. All falsifiable. Check back in 90 days. That's the case. The receipts weren't hidden. They were dated 2022 and waiting for you to catch up. We told you at the top that the man doing the math had it wrong on the number of weeks. That was the whole story in miniature. He got the small number wrong on purpose. He's getting the big number wrong too. If this is the version of the breakdown you came here for, hit the like, tap subscribe, ring the bell. Drop where you land in the comments. I'm reading them. Next case is already in research. Court adjourned.